Hey y'all, I'm Default Professor. Welcome to episode 2 of the Politics of Star Wars, and man, do we have a lot to talk about. Let's get to it. Voting is about choice. When you suspend voting or stop voting altogether, you no longer have a choice in who leads. In Star Wars, Palpatine is elected to be Chancellor of the Galactic Senate. The Clone Wars have just begun, and he convinces the Senate that to quickly end the war and save lives, they need strong, decisive leadership. The Senate agrees to hand over their power, believing that they will get it back as soon as the Clone Wars are over. Palpatine then stays in power through a loophole, and we all know how this story ends. It's called Star Wars, after all. In On Tyranny, Snyder addresses this exact issue. He tells us that the parties that remade states exploited a historic moment to make political life impossible for their opponents. We have never suspended voting in the United States, but when you have a system that is heavily influenced by a few wealthy individuals and corporations, the political spectrum is then limited to those individuals and political campaigns with the most money. Welcome to the oligarchy. In the United States, we have two main parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. While technically there are other parties, America has never voted in a third-party president. The political divide continues to grow, but the people running for office on either side stay the same. The wealthy have historically maintained a system that favors them. This very idea has become a talking point among the 2020 Democratic presidential contenders. We've also seen leaders use war and conflict to bolster their re-election campaigns. When the first trilogy was made, Richard Nixon ran for a second term on the idea that leadership should remain consistent during the Vietnam War. When the second trilogy was made, George W. Bush ran for a second term on the very same idea for a different war. And some have predicted that Donald Trump will use his escalation of a conflict with Iran to fuel his re-election campaign as well. This tactic is not new, and it is not novel. According to the Center for Research on Globalization, the United States has been at war for 227 years of its 244 in existence. If conflict never ends, when do the leaders give up their power? Of course, if a voting body, like the Star Wars Senate, is going to give up its right to vote, why would a leader give it back? The powerful do not often give up their power. The Empire was created because of the corruption of democratic principles. But what happened after the Empire fell in Episode 6? We have our own history to help us understand. After the Civil War in the United States, only a handful of former Confederate leaders served minimal sentences, and most were allowed back into positions of power during Reconstruction, paving the way for them to recreate the old system. The Empire was preserved in the First Order.
The Senate won't stand for this.
The Senate and the rest of the Hosnian system are now nothing but ashes.
Those red lights in the sky.
It's beautiful, isn't it? You see, the Republic spent decades doing nothing. And all along, we were preparing for this day.
In the game, we see several characters from the Empire make appearances under the banner of the First Order after starting security companies or remaining in the military. Gleb, a former leadership trainer for the Empire, starts Janata Security, which is a key piece in the First Order's military strategy. Hask, a former member of the elite Inferno Squad, is a high-ranking member of the First Order military. Those with power sought to preserve that power by any means necessary.
I had to live in your galaxy, Iden. Now it's your turn to live in mine.
This brings us back to oligarchy. Snyder calls giving money to political campaigns an odd American idea, because it means, as he states, the very rich have far more free speech and in so effect far more voting power than other citizens. With Citizens United, corporate political contributions are considered protected under the First Amendment, allowing unlimited money to flow into campaigns on either side of the political aisle. Justice John Paul Stevens dissented, saying the court's ruling was, quote, a rejection of the common sense of the American people who have recognized a need to prevent corporations from undermining self-government. On one hand, this helps pit two parties with unlimited money against each other, essentially assuring a two-party system. But it also moves us closer to a one-party system in which the values and policies supported by either side are superseded by the desires of corporations and mega donors. The will of capitalism usurps the will of the people. George Lucas said on Charlie Rose, "I'm a very ardent patriot, but I'm also a very ardent believer in democracy, not capitalist democracy. And I do not believe that the rich should be able to buy the government." So what can we, the ordinary citizen, do to prevent a one-party state? Snyder gives two recommendations, and these are the two I want to stress to you today. Go vote and limit the amount of money in politics. Snyder tells us that where annual elections end, tyranny begins. So go vote. It is also important for you to fight for your right to accessible voting. In many states, it is legally required for high schools to offer students opportunities to register to vote when they turn 18. If you don't have that, ask your administration why. And voting is especially important in the upcoming 2020 election, as the role of regulation, the direction of our courts, and the role of money in politics is on the ballot, and it will continue to be on the ballot as long as we allow it. But also pay attention to those who do not have equal access to voting. The more access we all have, the more just and equitable the system is. So call your representatives, write them letters, tweet at them, and remember, be nice, be earnest, be persuasive. Also know that the idea of war and conflict being used to maintain power is not foreign, nor is it a relic of the past. It is currently being used right now. So support candidates who oppose war, because it isn't the powerful and wealthy that go to war. It's the poor and the dispossessed. And individually, there is not a lot we can do about money in politics, but you can help break down the systems that create inequitable funding and spending in politics. Challenge your local officials to end gerrymandering in your state and district, and support candidates that do not accept large donations from corporations to their campaigns. Support candidates who want dark money out of politics and are willing to hold dark money groups to account. Support candidates who want to protect elections and make elections a prominent part of American life. And, of course, you can run for office. As they say, be the change you wish to see in the world. Thanks for stopping in. Come back next week where we continue our look at the politics of Star Wars with the help of EA's Battlefront 2 and Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny. Give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and tell me in the comments what you think needs to be done to protect our democracy. Until next time, remember you have the power to write your own story. So get to it.